Don't you dare touch her,
What are you
don't.
doing?
Harry's
Get that
voice
thing away from her
exploded
ear.
through the marble hallway.
Are you crazy?
His footsteps thundering closer. In the upstairs bathroom, Alicia's hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped the tweezers. Katie sat perfectly still on the edge of the bathtub, her blue eyes wide, trusting as Alicia's fingers worked inside her ear canal, going deeper than any doctor ever had. Just a little more. Please, God, just let me. Then she felt it. Something solid. Something that shouldn't be there. When Alicia pulled it out, she almost screamed. 8 years. 8 years of the best specialists on the East Coast examining this child's ears. 8 years of Harry Milcon flying his daughter to clinics in 3 countries, spending millions, begging for answers. And not one of them, not one, had found this. What came out of Katie Milcon's ear that day will leave you breathless. What it revealed about the people her father trusted. That will shake you to your core. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Harry Milcon was the kind of rich that makes people uncomfortable. Not because he flaunted it, he didn't, but because you could feel the weight of it in every room he entered. Private security. Tailored suits that cost more than a car. A mansion 3 blocks from the National Mall with 16 bedrooms and a fountain in the driveway that ran year-round, even in the dead of DC winter. From the outside, his life looked like the American dream on steroids. But inside that house, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like Sunday morning with coffee and soft light. This was the kind of silence that swallows you whole. The kind that sits on your chest at 3 a.m. and reminds you that no amount of money can fix the one thing that's breaking you. Harry's daughter, Katie, was born deaf. 8 years old. Never heard a bird sing. Never heard her father say, "I love you," out loud. Never heard the voice of the mother she lost the day she took her first breath. Catherine Milcon died in childbirth. Hemorrhaging, the doctors said. They did everything they could. Harry sat in that hospital room, holding his wife's hand as the light left her eyes, listening to the sound of machines flatlining, and in that moment, he made a promise. I will give our daughter everything. Everything. But 8 years later, he'd learned a brutal truth. There are some things money can't buy. He'd taken Katie everywhere. Johns Hopkins. Mayo Clinic. A specialist in Zurich who was supposedly the best in the world. They ran tests, audiograms, CT scans, MRIs, genetic panels. They used words like congenital sensorineural hearing loss and cochlear nerve hypoplasia. Big words that all meant the same thing. There's nothing we can do. You need to accept this. Your daughter will never hear. Harry didn't accept it. He couldn't. Because every time he looked at Katie, he saw Catherine. The same green eyes. The same stubborn little chin. And every time Katie tried to communicate, signing with her small hands, pointing, writing notes, he felt the weight of his failure crushing him. I couldn't save your mother. I can't even give you sound. So he kept searching, kept spending, kept hoping that somewhere someone had an answer. He didn't know the answer was about to walk through his front door, carrying a mop. Alicia Collins was not supposed to be there. 29 years old, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Anacostia with water stains on the ceiling and a landlord who didn't fix anything. No college degree. No medical training. Just a high school diploma, a work ethic that wouldn't quit, and a grandmother in a nursing home she couldn't afford. The nursing home sent letters. 3 months behind on payments. If Alicia didn't come up with $8,000 by the end of the month, they were transferring her grandmother to a state facility. The kind of place where the lights flicker and the staff is overworked and people go to disappear. Alicia couldn't let that happen. Her grandmother, Gigi she called her, had raised Alicia after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. Gigi worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. She taught Alicia to pray when things got hard. She taught her that faith wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up when you didn't. God puts people in your path for a reason, baby, Gigi used to say. You just gotta be brave enough to see it. Alicia thought about that a lot, especially when she got the call about the Milcon estate. The agency said it was a temporary position. 2 weeks, maybe 3. The previous maid had quit suddenly. Couldn't handle the environment, whatever that meant. The pay was good. Better than good. If Alicia worked every day, she could cover the nursing home bill and maybe, buy herself a little breathing room. So on a cold Monday morning in November, Alicia stood outside the iron gates of the Milcon mansion, staring up at the columned facade, trying to steady her breathing. You can do this. You need this. Just clean, keep your head down, and get paid. She pressed the intercom button. A voice crackled through. Name: Alicia Collins. From the agency. The gates swung open with a low mechanical hum. Alicia walked up the long driveway, past the fountain, past the perfectly trimmed hedges, and felt the weight of the house pressing down on her before she even stepped inside. Surrounded by toys she wasn't playing with. She had blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she was wearing a blue dress with small flowers embroidered on the collar. She looked like a porcelain doll, beautiful, fragile, untouched. But what struck Alicia most was the look in her eyes. Empty. Not sad exactly. Just absent. Like she'd learned a long time ago that hoping for things only made the silence louder. Harry Milcon stood near the window, arms crossed, watching his daughter like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. When he turned to acknowledge Alicia, his face was all business. You're the new maid. Yes, sir. The agency briefed you. Yes, sir. He studied her for a moment, and Alicia felt the full weight of his scrutiny. This was a man used to controlling everything, used to getting results, and right now she was just another employee, another temporary solution to a problem that wouldn't go away. My daughter is deaf, he said, his voice flat. She doesn't speak. She uses sign language, but you don't need to learn it. Just stay out of her way. Do your job. Don't ask questions. Alicia nodded. But as Harry walked away, she couldn't stop looking at Katie. The little girl was touching her ear. Not scratching. Not rubbing. Just touching it. Over and over. Like something was bothering her. Alicia had worked enough jobs, been around enough kids, to know when something wasn't right. Why would a deaf child keep touching her ear? If you've ever felt invisible, like the world decided you didn't matter because you didn't have the right credentials or the right last name, then you already know why this story matters. Alicia didn't have power. She didn't have status. But she had eyes. And she had a heart that wouldn't let her look away. If that means something to you, if you believe the smallest voices sometimes carry the biggest truth, don't scroll past this. Stay with me. Over the next few days, Alicia fell into a rhythm. She cleaned the marble floors, dusted the bookshelves, wiped down the endless windows that let light into a house that still felt dark. But she kept watching Katie. The little girl was always alone. Harry worked from home most days, locked in his study, on calls that sounded tense even through the walls. There were no other kids. No playdates. No laughter. Just Katie, sitting in silence, touching her ear. One afternoon, while Alicia was folding laundry in the hallway, she saw Katie walk past, heading toward her bedroom. The girl paused, wincing slightly, and brought her hand up to her ear again. Alicia's chest tightened. Something's wrong. That night, after her shift, Alicia sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She kept seeing Katie's face. Kept thinking about that repetitive motion, touch, wince, touch. She thought about Gigi. God puts people in your path for a reason. Alicia didn't know anything about medicine. She wasn't a doctor. She wasn't even a nurse. But she knew what it looked like when someone was in pain. and she knew what it felt like to be ignored. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything shifted. Harry had left for a meeting downtown. The house was empty except for Alicia and Katie. Alicia was cleaning the upstairs bathroom when she heard a small sound, a whimper. She stepped into the hallway and saw Katie sitting on the floor outside her bedroom, both hands pressed against her ear, her face scrunched up in pain. Alicia's heart dropped. She knelt down slowly, careful not to startle the girl. "Hey, sweetie. You okay?" Katie couldn't hear her, but she looked up, and Alicia saw tears pooling in her eyes. Without thinking, Alicia pointed to Katie's ear, then made a gesture like she wanted to look. Katie hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Alicia gently tilted Katie's head, angling it toward the light from the window. And that's when she saw it. Deep inside Katie's ear canal. Something dark. Something solid. Alicia's breath caught. How did no one see this? Her mind raced. She wasn't qualified for this. If she did something wrong, she could hurt Katie. She could get fired. She could get arrested. But if she did nothing, Katie would keep living in pain, in silence, and no one else was going to help her. Alicia closed her eyes. "Please, God, if I'm supposed to do this, guide my hands." She stood up, went to the bathroom, and found a pair of tweezers. She sterilized them with rubbing alcohol, her hands trembling the entire time. Then she sat down with Katie again. "I'm going to help you, okay? I need you to stay very, very still." Katie couldn't hear the words, but somehow she understood. She sat perfectly still, her small body tense but trusting, as Alicia leaned in close and carefully, so carefully, inserted the tweezers into Katie's ear. She could feel her own heartbeat in her throat. "Don't slip. Don't push too hard. Please, God." The tweezers touched something solid. Alicia adjusted her grip and pulled. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, it started to come free. A dark, waxy mass. Bigger than she expected. Dense and compacted, like it had been there for years. When it finally came out, Alicia almost dropped it. She held it up to the light, staring in disbelief. This was blocking her hearing. This entire time. Katie blinked. She brought her hand up to her ear, touching it gently, and for the first time in days, she didn't wince. Alicia's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Thank you, God." But before she could even process what had just happened, the front door slammed. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. And then Harry's voice, sharp and furious. "What the hell is going on up here?" What happened next would test everything Harry Milcon believed about control, about trust, and about the people he'd spent his whole life overlooking. Because the moment he saw what Alicia had pulled from his daughter's ear, the moment he realized what it meant, his entire world cracked wide open. And there was no going back. Harry burst into the bathroom doorway, his face flushed, tie loosened like he'd been pulling at it during the drive home. His eyes went straight to Katie, then to Alicia kneeling beside her, then to the tweezers in her hand. "What are you doing?" His voice was low. Dangerous. Alicia stood up slowly, her legs shaking. "Mr. Milcon, I can explain. You're touching my daughter." He stepped forward, and Alicia instinctively moved between him and Katie. "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea?" There was something in her ear. Alicia's voice cracked, but she held her ground. She opened her palm, showing him the dark mass. This was blocking. Harry stared at it. His expression shifted from anger to confusion to something Alicia couldn't read. "Where did you get that?" "From Katie's ear. Mr. Milcon, I know I shouldn't have, but she was in pain, and I looked, and I saw. You had no right." His voice was shaking now. Not with anger. With something else. Fear, maybe. "You're not a doctor. You're not qualified. If you hurt her, if you caused any damage." She kept touching her ear, Alicia said, and now tears were streaming down her face. For days I watched her touch her ear over and over, and nobody was doing anything about it. So yes, I took a risk. But I couldn't just watch her suffer. Harry looked at his daughter. Katie was staring at both of them, her eyes wide, sensing the tension even if she couldn't hear the words. Then something happened that stopped Harry cold. Katie's mouth opened, and a sound came out. Not words. Not yet. Just a small, uncertain noise. Like she was testing something. Like she was hearing her own voice for the first time and didn't know what to make of it. Duh. Harry's knees almost gave out. Katie. Duh. Daddy. The word was rough, unpracticed, like vocal cords that had never been used were suddenly waking up. But it was there. Clear. Real. Harry dropped to his knees in front of his daughter, his hands shaking as he reached for her face. Baby. Can you hear me? Katie's eyes went wide. She touched her own ear, then looked at Alicia, then back at her father. Loud, she whispered. It's loud. And then she started to cry. Not from pain. From overwhelm. From 8 years of silence suddenly crashing into sound. The hum of the lights, the traffic outside, her father's breathing, her own heartbeat. Harry pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 8 years, he heard his daughter sob out loud. He looked up at Alicia, still kneeling there in her cleaning uniform, mascara running down her face. And he had no idea what to say. That night, Harry didn't sleep. He sat in his study with Katie asleep in the chair beside him. She wouldn't let him leave her side, and he stared at the dark mass Alicia had pulled from his daughter's ear. He'd put it in a plastic bag. He'd taken pictures of it. And now he was on the phone with Dr. Raymond Kettering, the ENT specialist who'd examined Katie 3 times over the past 4 years. I'm telling you, Raymond, it was in her ear. A blockage. A massive blockage. There was a pause on the other end. Harry, we examined her thoroughly. Multiple times. If there was a blockage of that size. Then you missed it. Harry's voice was steel. Or you ignored it. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll need to examine the material. And I'll need to see Katie again to assess. No. Excuse me. You're not touching my daughter again. Harry leaned forward, his jaw tight. I paid you $43,000 over 3 years. You ran every test you could bill me for. And not once, did you find what a maid with no medical training found in 5 minutes. Harry, I understand you're upset, but I want records. Every examination. Every scan. Every note you ever made about my daughter's condition. And I want them by tomorrow morning. He hung up before Kettering could respond. Then he made another call. And another. And another. Johns Hopkins. The clinic in Zurich. The audiologist in Manhattan. Every single doctor who'd told him there was nothing they could do. By 3 a.m., Harry had filled an entire legal pad with notes. Dates. Billing codes. Phrases that kept appearing in medical records. Congenital hearing loss. No structural abnormalities detected. Recommend continued monitoring. Continued monitoring. That was the phrase they all used. Code for keep coming back so we can keep charging you. Harry's hands were shaking. Not from exhaustion. From rage. If you've ever been failed by the people you trusted most, the ones who were supposed to help, supposed to care, but looked you in the eye and lied because there was money in it, then you know what Harry was feeling in that moment. You know what it's like when the system you believed in shows you it was never built for healing. It was built for profit. And if that truth makes your blood boil the way it's making his boil right now, then you understand why this story can't just be scrolled past. Stay with me. Because what Harry does next, it's going to cost him. But some things are worth the cost. The next morning, Alicia showed up for work not knowing if she still had a job. She'd barely slept. She kept replaying the moment Harry walked in, the fury on his face, the way Katie's voice had broken through the silence. Did I do the right thing? Or did I just destroy my life? When she rang the doorbell, she half expected security to turn her away. Instead, the door opened, and Harry stood there, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Come in." Alicia stepped inside, her heart pounding. Harry led her to the living room, where Katie was sitting on the couch, wearing noise-canceling headphones. She waved when she saw Alicia, and Alicia felt her throat tighten. "She's adjusting," Harry said quietly. "Everything's too loud for her right now. The doctors, the real doctors I called last night, said it's normal. Her brain has to relearn how to process sound." Alicia nodded, not sure what to say. Harry turned to face her fully. "I owe you an apology." Alicia blinked. "Sir, I almost fired you yesterday. Almost called the police. I was ready to have you arrested for saving my daughter's life." His voice cracked. "I spent 8 years trusting people with degrees and credentials and letters after their names. And not one of them did what you did. Not one of them cared enough to just look." Tears were streaming down Alicia's face now. "I didn't know if it would work," she whispered. "I was so scared I'd hurt her. But you tried." Harry's eyes were red. "You risked everything. Your job. Your freedom. And you did it because you saw a child in pain and you couldn't walk away." He paused. "Why?" Alicia thought about Gigi. About the nursing home bills. About all the time she'd been invisible, overlooked, dismissed because she didn't have the right background or the right skin color or the right last name. "Because someone has to care," she said simply. "And if it wasn't going to be them, then it had to be me." Harry nodded slowly. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is your pay for the 2 weeks. Plus a bonus." He handed it to her. "It should cover your grandmother's bills. And then some." Alicia opened the envelope, and almost dropped it. It was a check for $50,000. "Mr. Milcon, I can't." "You can. And you will." His voice was firm but kind. "But that's not why I asked you to come in today." Alicia looked up at him, confused. "I'm going after every doctor who failed my daughter. Every hospital, every clinic, every specialist who looked at her and saw a paycheck instead of a patient. And I'm going to need someone who understands what really happened. Someone who was there." He held out his hand. "I need you to testify. I need you to tell the truth. Will you do that?" Alicia stared at his hand. Then she shook it. "Yes, sir. I will." The lawsuit hit the news 3 weeks later. Billionaire accuses top hospitals of medical negligence in daughter's case. Harry didn't just go after one doctor. He went after all of them. Johns Hopkins, the Swiss clinic, Dr. Kettering, the audiologist, everyone who'd examined Katie and missed, or ignored, the massive blockage in her ear. His legal team was a machine. They subpoenaed records, interviewed staff, pulled billing statements. And what they found was worse than Harry had imagined. The blockage hadn't formed overnight. Medical records showed it had been building for years. And multiple doctors had noted unusual earwax buildup in their charts. But none of them had done anything about it. Why? Because treating the blockage would have been a one-time procedure. Simple. Cheap. Over in an hour. But a deaf child. A deaf child meant years of appointments. Hearing tests. Cochlear implant consultations. Speech therapy referrals. Experimental treatments. A deaf child was profitable. When the deposition started, the excuses came fast. We followed standard protocol. The imaging didn't show a removable blockage. Earwax impaction is common and usually doesn't cause complete hearing loss. But Harry's lawyers had the evidence. Photos of what Alicia had removed. Expert testimony from independent ENTs who examined Katie and confirmed that the blockage was severe enough to cause conductive hearing loss, and that it absolutely should have been detected. And they had Alicia. The conference room was intimidating. Long table. Lawyers on both sides. A court reporter in the corner. Alicia sat in the middle of it all, wearing a dress she'd borrowed from a friend because she didn't own anything nice enough for this. Dr. Kettering's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in a gray suit, smiled at her. It wasn't a kind smile. "Ms. Collins, you have no medical training. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "No nursing degree. No EMT certification. Nothing." "No, ma'am." "So when you decided to insert a foreign object into an 8-year-old child's ear canal, you did so knowing you had no qualifications whatsoever." Alicia's hands were shaking under the table, but she kept her voice steady. "I did it knowing she was in pain, and knowing that no one else was helping her." The lawyer's smile tightened. "You knew she was in pain? Ms. Collins, Katie Milcon is deaf. She can't tell you she's in pain. So how exactly did you know?" "Because I watched her." "You watched her?" "Yes, ma'am. 4 days. She kept touching her ear. Over and over. Wincing. Pulling away when I tried to get close to that side of her head. You don't need a medical degree to see when a child is hurting. But you do need a medical degree to perform procedures on that child." "I didn't perform a procedure." Alicia's voice was stronger now. "I removed a blockage. Something that should have been removed years ago. By a trained professional. By anyone who cared enough to look." The room went silent. The lawyer shuffled her papers. "Ms. Collins, isn't it true that you were in severe financial distress at the time of this incident?" Alicia's stomach dropped. Yes. Your grandmother's nursing home bills were overdue. You were about to lose your apartment. You were desperate." The lawyer leaned forward. "Desperate enough to stage a miracle so you could secure a payout from a grateful billionaire?" "No." Alicia's voice shook. "That's not. You saw an opportunity. A vulnerable child. A wealthy, grieving father. And you. I saw a little girl who needed help." Alicia stood up, tears streaming down her face. "I saw doctors who didn't care. I saw a system that failed her. And I saw that if I didn't do something, if I didn't try, she was going to keep suffering. So yes, I took a risk. And yes, I broke the rules. But I don't regret it. Because Katie can hear now. She can hear her father tell her he loves her. And no amount of money, no lawsuit, no legal argument is ever going to make me sorry for that." She sat back down, her whole body trembling. Harry, sitting across the room, had tears in his eyes. The lawyer didn't ask any more questions. The settlement came 6 months later. Harry didn't want money. He had enough. What he wanted was accountability. And he got it. Johns Hopkins issued a formal apology and revised their protocols for pediatric ear examinations. Dr. Kettering lost his medical license. The Swiss clinic paid an undisclosed sum to a Children's Hearing Health Foundation Harry established in Catherine's name. But for Harry, the real victory was smaller. More personal. It was Katie, sitting in the garden, headphones off, listening to the birds. It was the way she laughed now, out loud, unself-conscious when something was funny. It was the first time she said, "I love you, Daddy," and he heard it in her voice instead of reading it in her hands. Those were the moments that mattered. If you're still here, it's because you understand something most people miss. You understand that the biggest changes in life don't come from the people with the most power or the fanciest degrees. They come from the ones who care enough to act when no one else will. The ones who risk everything because staying silent would cost more. And if that's the kind of person you are, or the kind of person you're trying to become, then don't let this story fade into the noise. Let it remind you that you matter. That what you do matters. Even when the world tells you it doesn't. A year after the lawsuit, Alicia stood in the same mansion where everything had changed. But she wasn't there to clean. She was there as Katie's godmother. Officially. Legally. Harry had asked her months ago, and Alicia had cried so hard she couldn't answer for 10 minutes. Now she sat in the living room, the same room where she'd first seen Katie sitting silent and alone, and watched the little girl run around with 2 other children from her new school. A school for kids who'd been deaf and now, through various treatments, could hear. Katie was thriving, learning, talking non-stop, making up for 8 years of silence. Harry walked over and sat down beside Alicia. "She asked about you yesterday," he said. "Oh yeah. What did she say?" "She said you're her hero." Harry smiled. "Told her whole class the story. Her teacher called me very concerned. Asked if it was true that you performed surgery with tweezers." Alicia laughed, embarrassed. "I really hope she's not telling people I did surgery." "She's telling people you saved her life." Harry's smile faded into something more serious. "Because you did. And I'll spend the rest of mine making sure she never forgets it." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes again. She'd cried more in the past year than in her entire life. "How's Gigi?" Harry asked. "Good. Really good. She's in a new place now, the one you recommended. She loves it. Keeps telling everyone her granddaughter is friends with a billionaire." Alicia grinned. "I keep telling her we're not friends. We're family." Harry's eyes went soft. "Yeah, we are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Katie play. And for the first time in a long time, Alicia felt something she hadn't felt since she was a child herself. Peace. Not because her life was perfect. It wasn't. Not because all her problems were solved. They weren't. But because she knew, beyond any doubt, that she'd done what she was put on this earth to do. She'd seen someone who needed help. And she'd helped them. Everything else was just noise. The foundation was Harry's idea, but it was Alicia who ran it. The Catherine Milcon Foundation for Children's Hearing Health. They traveled to underserved communities across the country. Places where kids didn't have access to specialists, where hearing problems went undiagnosed for years because families couldn't afford care. Alicia trained teams of community health workers to do what she'd done. Look. Really look. Check for the simple things that got missed. And they found them. Dozens of cases. Kids with blockages, infections, fluid buildup. Treatable conditions that had been mistaken for permanent deafness. Some people called it a miracle. Alicia called it paying attention. One day, she got a letter from a mother in rural Kentucky. Her 6-year-old son had been diagnosed as deaf. The local clinic said there was nothing they could do. But Alicia's team visited. And they found a blockage. Removed it. And the boy heard his mother's voice for the first time. The letter ended with 4 words. "Thank you for seeing us." Alicia pinned it to her office wall. Right next to a photo of Katie, 11 years old now, smiling wide, wearing the headphones she didn't need anymore but kept as a reminder of where she'd been. And every time Alicia felt tired, every time she doubted whether what she was doing mattered, she looked at that photo. And remembered. You don't need credentials to change a life. You just need to care enough to try.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.